Picture the temperature at 40 degrees below zero, a forest gone dead silent under 3 feet of snow, and somewhere out there, an entire army is hunting one man they can't even see. That man was Simo Häyhä, a quiet farmer and part-time hunter from eastern Finland, a man who had never once fired a shot in anger before the winter of 1939. Then the Soviet Union invaded without warning. 500,000 soldiers poured across the border, tanks grinding through the snow toward towns that had almost nothing to stop them. Finland could field maybe 300,000 men total. No real air force, barely any tanks of its own, just endless forests, frozen lakes, and men who knew every inch of the land. Simo was one of those men, a reindeer herder who could read wind, shadow, and snowdrift better than any general planning the war from a warm office back in Moscow. He picked up a plain Finnish-built rifle, an M28-30, fitted with nothing but basic iron sights, and walked quietly into the pine forest along the Kollaa River. Everyone around him assumed he'd want a telescopic sight, something more modern. He refused it flat out, and that one stubborn choice may have saved his life 100 times over. Here's why. Glass catches sunlight, and a single glint off a lens can betray a sniper's exact position in an instant. Simo wasn't willing to gamble on that. So he lay low instead, cheek pressed hard against the stock, invisible against blinding white snow even at 300 meters, trusting nothing but his own 2 eyes. Before nearly every single shot, he packed cold snow into his mouth, just to keep his warm breath from rising into the freezing air like a signal flare. He also built low snow walls in front of his hiding spots and packed the powder down tight, so his muzzle flash wouldn't kick up a telltale cloud of snow. Soviet soldiers started vanishing along the Kollaa front, one after another. One shot, one kill, no scream, no warning, and absolutely nothing to shoot back at. At first, officers blamed simple bad luck, just a string of unfortunate patrols. Then the death toll kept climbing, week after week, and quiet panic finally set in. Within a month, the Red Army had a name for the invisible killer hiding somewhere in the trees. They called him deadliest, meaning the White Death. Soldiers began refusing to walk across open ground near the front line. Some deserted their posts entirely rather than risk crossing a field the White Death might be watching. But the strangest part of this whole story comes later, when an entire army turns nearly every weapon it owns against one lone farmer carrying an old rifle. The Soviets started sending their own trained snipers into those same woods, one team after another, hunting for the man who had been quietly hunting them. Simo killed them too, every single one, because he knew that forest better than any outsider ever could. Every fallen log, every drift, every shadow at noon. He wore a simple white camouflage suit sewn directly over his uniform and lay completely motionless for hours, in cold that could kill an unprepared man all on its own. Frostbite crept into his fingers on some mornings. He kept shooting anyway, because moving even slightly meant revealing exactly where he had been hiding all along. When sniping alone couldn't stop him, Soviet command finally turned artillery on the entire hillside, shelling that quiet tree line for hours at a time, again and again. Simo simply moved to another snowdrift, another patch of shadow, and kept on firing while the forest around him shook, splintered, and burned through the smoke. By late winter, he wasn't relying only on his rifle anymore. He'd picked up a Suomi submachine gun too, for the moments the enemy got dangerously close. In roughly 3 months, from December into early March of 1940, official Finnish counts credited him with 505 confirmed kills using his rifle alone. 505 men, by that accounting, brought down by one Finnish farmer across roughly 82 brutal, freezing days inside a single stretch of forest. Historians still argue over the exact final number today, but even the most conservative estimates leave Simo Häyhä as the deadliest sniper ever recorded in warfare. He worked almost entirely alone through most of it. No radio for backup on most days, rarely even a spotter beside him, just a discipline that bordered on the inhuman. Rumors spread fast through Soviet ranks that the White Death could melt directly into snowbanks, that bullets simply passed through him, that he wasn't fully human anymore. Of course he was human, painfully so, and on March 6, 1940, the war finally brutally caught up with him in a single terrible instant. An enemy round, likely an exploding bullet, tore through his lower jaw and left the entire left side of his face in absolute ruins. Witnesses later said he didn't scream at all. He simply raised a thumbs up to the men dragging him out of the snow, then slipped straight into a coma. For days he lay completely unconscious, his face swollen far beyond recognition, while doctors weren't even sure he would survive the night, let alone the war itself. Then, on March 13, 1940, Simo Häyhä finally opened his eyes again. That happened to be the exact day the Winter War officially came to an end. He had slept straight through the war's final week, a war he had personally shaped more than almost any other single soldier on either side of it. Surgeons spent months slowly reconstructing his shattered jaw piece by piece. He carried those visible scars quietly for the rest of his very long life afterward. Finland technically lost the war on paper, forced a hand over a slice of territory to a far larger enemy. But it kept its independence, and that mattered most. Simo went home to his small village afterward, and if you had passed him on the road, you would never have guessed what he had just lived through. He gave almost no interviews over the following decades. He never once chased fame or fortune from what he had done out there in the snow. Instead, he quietly raised hunting dogs and stalked moose through the very same forest where he had once, just as quietly, stalked other men. Decades later, when people finally worked up the nerve to ask how he became such a devastating marksman, his answer came out almost insultingly simple. Practice, he said flatly. That was the entire secret. No mysticism, no divine gift, just thousands of patient hours spent with a rifle in the cold. He lived until the year 2002, dying at 96 years old, an old farmer who had once made an entire invading army genuinely afraid of empty snow. Along the Kollaa River today, the wind still moves through the pines exactly the way it did back in that terrible, unforgiving winter of 1939. One man, one plain rifle with no scope at all, 82 days, a body count the Soviet Union never fully explained, even to its own commanders. Some Soviet officers reportedly refused to believe a single sniper had done all of it, insisting stubbornly that it must have been an entire hidden squad instead. But the Finnish soldiers who fought beside him at Kollaa knew better than anyone. They watched him work completely alone, patient as frost, time after time. Maybe that's the real lesson quietly buried under all that snow. The deadliest weapon in any war isn't always the biggest or the loudest one. Sometimes it's simply the most patient one, lying perfectly still in the cold long after everyone else has already given up and gone home. Somewhere in that story, a farmer with an ordinary rifle proved that a nation's survival can rest entirely on the shoulders of one unremarkable, extraordinary man. If stories like this one pull you in, soldiers' history almost lets slip away. Stay close, because there are so many more still waiting quietly in the snow.